The Prince of Egypt, the story of Moses. In the heart of the mighty Egyptian empire, a deep and foreboding shadow had tragically fallen over the once thriving land of Goshen. The descendants of Jacob, who were once honored and welcomed guests, were now cruelly subjugated as a nation of slaves. Their backs were constantly bent under the sharp lash of merciless and unforgiving Egyptian taskmasters who showed them no pity. The air, thick with the choking dust of countless brickyards, carried a constant and sorrowful lament, the sound of profound suffering. Pharaoh, a man whose heart was as hard as the stones of his monuments, deeply feared the growing numbers of the Hebrews. His decree was a blade of ice plunged into the heart of every Hebrew family, a command of unspeakable cruelty and horror. Every newborn Hebrew son was to be cast into the great river Nile, a horrific sacrifice to the gods of Egypt. In the midst of this state-sanctioned terror, a woman from the tribe of Levi, named Jochebed, gave birth to a son. When she looked upon him, she saw that he was no ordinary child. He was beautiful, a precious gift from God. The law of the land demanded his immediate death, but a mother's powerful love, fortified by an unshakable faith, defied the command. For 3 long months, the child's cries were carefully muffled, his very existence a whispered secret within the mud-brick walls. But a growing baby cannot be hidden forever, and the risk of discovery became a spectre that haunted their every waking moment. With a heavy but resolute heart, Jochebed knew she could no longer conceal him, but she would not surrender him to the Nile. Instead, she chose to commit him to the river in a vessel of her own making, an act of desperate, prayerful hope. She gathered papyrus reeds, and, with skillful hands, she wove them into a small, watertight basket, a tiny ark of salvation. She sealed it meticulously, carefully coating the entire basket with both bitumen and pitch, a thick black armor, against the seeping waters. The moment of parting was an agony of the soul. As she placed her precious son inside the basket on the woven reeds, she kissed his brow one last time, her tears mingling with the morning dew on his face, a final, loving touch. Then, with a silent prayer that reached beyond the heavens, she placed the basket among the tall reeds that lined the Nile's bank. She was not abandoning him to mere chance. She was intentionally placing him into the powerful and protective hands of God. Her elder daughter Miriam was instructed to watch from a distance, her eyes fixed on the precious and vulnerable cargo. Providence, which men often call chance, was already at work in this very place, orchestrating a miraculous encounter. Down to that very spot on the river came a royal procession led by Pharaoh's own daughter, descending to the Nile to bathe. As she walked along the riverbank with her attendants, her observant eyes caught sight of the strange basket hidden amongst the reeds. Her royal curiosity was immediately piqued by the unusual sight, and she sent one of her trusted maids to retrieve the object. The servant returned from the water's edge, carefully placing the woven ark at the princess's feet for her inspection. When the princess opened the lid of the basket, the sight within stilled her breath and captured her complete attention. There lay a baby, and as he felt the sudden light and the gaze of strangers, he began to cry out loudly. The sound was not the wail of an ordinary infant. It was a cry that spoke of abandonment and a life on the precipice, and that sorrowful cry pierced the very heart of the princess, stirring a deep and immediate emotional response within her. A powerful wave of compassion washed over her, powerful and immediate, changing her perspective in an instant. "This is one of the Hebrew children," she whispered to herself, her voice a mixture of genuine pity and profound wonder. She knew her father's law and that the child was condemned, but the law of the king was eclipsed by a higher law of mercy. Seeing her perfect opportunity, Miriam emerged from her hiding place and approached the princess with a boldness born of deep love. With profound respect in her voice, she asked, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women?" The plan was audacious, a divine stroke of genius, and the princess, her heart already claimed by the child, agreed at once. Miriam ran, her feet flying over the familiar paths back to her home, carrying the most astonishing and wonderful news imaginable. She quickly returned with her own mother, Jochebed, who presented herself to the princess with a carefully composed expression of humble obedience. She masterfully hid the powerful storm of joy and overwhelming relief that was raging wildly within her grateful heart. Pharaoh's daughter, completely unaware of the divine drama unfolding before her very eyes, spoke with authority and purpose. "Take this child away and nurse him for me," she commanded Jochebed, offering an unexpected and miraculous solution. "And I will give you your wages," she added, sealing the incredible arrangement that God had orchestrated for them. And so, in a turn of events only God could orchestrate, Jochebed took her own son home with her that day. She was now being paid by the very government that sought his life to nurture and care for him in every way. She held him to her breast, not in fearful secret, but in complete safety, protected by the official seal of the royal house. In those precious and formative early years, she poured into him not only her milk, but also the sacred stories of his people. She taught him the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, ensuring he understood his true heritage and identity. She instilled in him the knowledge of the one true God, who had not forgotten them in their profound and prolonged suffering. When the child was weaned and had grown older, Jochebed faithfully fulfilled her promise to the princess of the land. With a heart that was both deeply grateful and profoundly aching, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter at the royal court. The princess formally adopted him as her own son, giving him a new name that would echo through all of eternity. She called him Moses, a name that would forever carry the story of his miraculous rescue from the waters of the Nile. She explained her choice of name, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water," forever linking his identity to his salvation. Moses grew up in the lap of unimaginable luxury, a world away from his humble beginnings among the Hebrew slaves. He walked the gilded halls of the royal palace, his simple Hebrew tunic replaced with the finest Egyptian linen and adornments. He was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, learning complex hieroglyphs, mathematics, astronomy, and the strategies of war. He was raised as a prince of the most powerful nation on earth, yet the whispers of his true identity remained afire. As he reached manhood, this internal conflict began to surface, creating a deep turmoil within his soul and his mind. He went out to see his own people, to witness their heavy burdens firsthand, and understand the depth of their suffering. The sight of their affliction was not a distant report. It was a brutal reality that tore at his very conscience. One day he saw an Egyptian taskmaster mercilessly beating a Hebrew slave, an act of extreme and unjust cruelty. A lifetime of suppressed identity and a burgeoning sense of justice erupted within him in a moment of uncontrollable fury. He looked this way and that, and, seeing no one, a red rage consumed him as he struck the Egyptian, killing him. The next day he went out again and saw two Hebrews fighting, so he said to the one in the wrong, "Why hit your fellow Hebrew?" But his intervention was met with scorn, as the man thrust him aside with a sharp, cutting retort. "Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" The blood drained from Moses' face as the man's words, a dagger to his heart, revealed his terrible secret was out. The very people he sought to defend now saw him as a threat, a murderer, and a dangerous man to be avoided. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped him as he thought, "What I did must be known throughout the land of Egypt." Soon, word of the killing reached the ears of Pharaoh, who now saw Moses not as a son, but as a traitor. Pharaoh sought to have him executed, and Moses' life in Egypt was over, the palace now a deadly trap for him. Stripped of his titles, his wealth, and his security, Moses fled for his life into the vast, unforgiving desert. He journeyed eastward, leaving the fertile Nile Valley far behind for the barren wastelands, until he finally reached the land of Midian. Exhausted and completely alone, he sat down by a well, a stranger in a strange land with an unknown future before him. The education of the palace was complete. Now, in the wilderness, the education of God was about to begin for him.